Hey YouTube, Mike the Alpha Hoarder here. Welcome to my channel. If you don't know me, I hoard and collect alpha cards. And because whenever I talk about this with my friends or my family, they either get glazed over eyes or voice concerns about my mental well-being, I've decided to turn to the endless void that is YouTube. And so on this channel I am documenting and sharing my collection, rambling about MTG finance and related stuff, and that's what I'm going to do today. So last week I was away and I had a pile of mail that I had to sort through. So today I just need to sort a couple of cards for condition. I guess I'll just do that as a bit of a visual, but really I want to talk today about storage, long-term storage of cards, and insurance. So let's begin. So I do digitize many of my cards, anything that's an uncommon or a rare, and then a bunch of other stuff. So basically I just sort these based on the condition and the rarity. It determines which binder or box or secret underground hoard vault they go into. So I'm just going to go through them. And while I do, let's talk about storage. So the biggest enemy to long-term storage of trading cards is humidity, by far. Poorly stored cards will warp, they will discolor. It's bad news bears. You want to keep your humidity below 50%. Wherever you're storing the cards. Now, I have read online that trouble can start below 30% as well. I guess that might be a fair range to use, 30 to 50%. What I do is I've got a bunch of these things. I think it was like a 10-pack on Amazon for not very much money. And so basically anywhere that I'm keeping cards, any box or closet or secret underground chamber, I've got these in there, so I always know what's going on with my humidity. And then I run dehumidifiers continuously in any location that stores cards. Any sealed boxes, safes, and the sort, I would recommend some desiccants. These are the ones I use. These are cool because they turn pink when they've sort of finished absorbing air, and then you throw them in the microwave and they go back to blue. So if you have a safe or something like that where the air is not going to circulate as freely, you should throw those in there because your dehumidifier might not be able to get in as easily. And I swap those out sort of on a monthly basis. Okay. Sorry, just doing some sorting in my head here. So, humidity is the #1 concern. This is why attics are bad news. Basements can be bad news. Direct sunlight is also bad news. I personally recommend living in a secret underground lair like I do. No windows, no fresh air. That's great for cardboard. Does funny things to the mind, though. But I've seen some people that have these really cool display cases, featuring some of their stuff. And that's great. There's really something to be said for showing off this stuff. But if it's sitting near windows for years on end, there's going to be damage. The ultraviolet spectrum is not kind to paper and printed materials. So, is it an investment or is it something you like to have in display? That's up to you, not me, but something to be aware of. And, generally, large and repeated swings in temperature are not going to be good for cardstock over time. So somewhere climate controlled is definitely advisable. After humidity, I would say the biggest danger is probably handling in all of its forms. Physically handling the card like I'm doing now. You notice I tend to grip it by the sleeve. Oils and perspiration, moisture, anything on your hand, it will discolor cards over time. You can see on unlimited cards and revised cards, they sometimes get discoloring almost like a grime. Sometimes that's dirt, from play on the ground, but sometimes it's just the accumulation of too much touching. So, watch out for that. Obviously, the best way to preserve a card is to slab it. This is why you slab cards. You entomb it in plastic to preserve it, but that does not mean that all slabs are created equal. BGS has an inner sleeve, you can see, around the card. And that does a pretty good job of holding it in place. I don't know if this will pick up on the camera. But that's not making any sound, and the card really isn't sliding. I mean, you see the gap on the bottom? You can get it to slide, but not easily. It's not moving much. In my opinion, BGS is the best for long-term storage. PSA does not have an inner sleeve. They get these little borders pretty tight, but let me see if you can hear this. Yeah, you can hear that, right? That card moves around. That card really doesn't. So, is that really going to do a lot of damage over time? Probably not, but you never know. If you're shuffling stuff between boxes, you're removing whatever, or even if it just falls. I've got a display case up, and one time I had the door open and 3 of the cards fell, tumbled all the way to the ground. I would much rather they're in the BGS slab. CGC, similar to PSA, it is pretty tight, but the card is loose in there. Their slab is also, I don't think this will show on the camera, but their slab is quite thick. That card can sort of go side to side, so there's a lot of movement in there. SGC, this is the only SGC I have. They make it tight too. This is a plastic frame around the card. There's definitely less movement here. I don't know how often you're going to run into these guys, but there's definitely less movement in this slab compared to the other two. So anyway, long-term storage, this is definitely great. But, not perfect. These will protect you. In theory, they're hermetically sealed to protect you from spills. A drop should not do as much damage to the card as dropping something raw. Say you're not going to bend it, accidentally put an elbow on it and bend the card. But one thing I did notice, I live in New York, so it gets pretty cold in the winter. Occasionally I've gone out to my mailbox, brought in a package, opened it up, it had a slab in it, unwrap it, and in the house the whole thing starts to fog up on the inside. I've never seen enough condensation to pose a risk, but the fact that it's sealed is obviously doesn't make it immune to temperature and humidity changes, so be aware of that. So yeah, grading's great, but it's not necessarily practical. You can't grade every single card. Okay, so I'll mention these tight sleeves. I don't like these tight sleeves. I think there's just no way that constant pressure on the card is good for the integrity of the edges. I worry a lot about damage. If you have to take the card in and out. If you have to jam a card to get it in, that just can't be good. There's no scenario where that's good news, right? I personally just do single sleeved and a nice clean sleeve. I've said this before, don't put a nice card in a dirty sleeve. This is a sleeve that came in the mail. You're not going to be able to see it. Well, maybe you can. This is a sleeve that one of my cards came in the mail, and you know, it's one of these sleeves where you might have seen them before. You open it up and you go trying to pull the card out, and the card's like sticking to the sleeve because there's just so much grime in there. Definitely not good, you know. A little bit of grime or something in here is pressed against the card. So I prefer these nice loose sleeves. I don't like the tight ones that are pinching it. This was the example I was going to use. Let me see. Just a random card. So this is one of these skin tight ones, but I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but I have to push this card to get it in, and it is squeezing it. And if there's any dirt in here, that is going to be pressed right against the surface, and to get it out, I have to pinch the hell out of the card. It just seems like a bad idea. So I just stick with penny sleeves. These are Titan shields. I use these sometimes too. They are more expensive, but the main reason for one over the other is just corner protection. So sometimes for a more expensive card, you know, the penny sleeve is going to flex really easily. So it's really only going to be an issue in the corners. The Titan shield doesn't. It's got quite a bit of firmness to it. So if you drop this on a corner, I really don't think you'd have anything to worry about. That's boring. But it's a tighter sleeve, which I don't love, and they're more expensive, so, you know. But for me, it's just single sleeve. Anything acid-free, you know, will do. And even if it's going in a binder, in binder pages, I always have them sleeved. I don't like the double sleeving because it requires the skin tight ones, but also I'm a little less convinced about the real value of double sleeving if you're not playing them. But you know, I'll tell you, when Rudy does his videos where he's sliding the cards in and out of the, you know, the 9-pocket Ultra Pro pages or whatever, it always makes my stomach tumble a bit. It just seems like it's asking for scratches eventually. So, you got your cards sleeved. You have to decide between binders and boxes. Those are sort of your options, if they're raw. So, it depends on what you are doing with the cards. Most of my cards go into boxes. Boxes are the safest if you don't plan to look at them very often, but it can lead to rougher handling if you overpack the box. You know, if you've got them stuffed in and you have to get something out, you know, you don't want to be pulling or trying to grab the sides. So I never fill my boxes. I have spacers that I can remove first. Actually, let's show you. This is a little contraption that I 3D printed, but I've got a bunch of sizes for this middle rod, and this all just snaps together. So when I've got a box, what I do is fill it up with some cards. This is also a little 3D printed spacer, but you know, get this stuff on Etsy. Some foam or an empty deck box or whatever. And some cards, and I leave a lot of space. A little less than that. I have a smaller rod that I use, but I leave space. And then when I need to see those cards, I can pull these out or I can pull this out. And now there's plenty of space to let the stuff lean back, and you can go through it without causing any problems. But boxes are better if you're not going to be going through them a lot. Now, I keep about a dozen binders around with different features that I like to view. And you know, I do love looking at them, so I definitely keep the binders. But binders have, you know, their own concerns you need to be aware of. And again, the issue is mainly going to be handling of one sort of another. So actively looking at the cards If it's just sitting in storage somewhere, you know, assuming it's all climate controlled and the other things we talked about, you might have a little less to worry about. But binders can be dangerous. Binder bites and binder dings are the two things to worry about. This here is a binder bite. This is what happens when the binder rings are open, and unfortunately this card gets in the way as they snap shut, and they can just eat the card. Binder dings, unfortunate that these are quite light, but they are definitely there. Yep, you see here and here. Pressure from the metal ring warps the card, and it is so easy for that to happen, and it just takes one mistake. If you use D-ring binders, let's see if I can do this without crushing the cards I'm supposed to be sorting. I don't use D-ring binders, so I just threw something random in here just for the demo. But if you use D-ring binders, see if you can possibly store them this way. Hang it, or in a shelf. That will eliminate a lot of risk. If you can't, then you just need to pay attention. You need to be obsessive about placing the pages. So first of all, I would not fill it above, 75%. These are mostly empty pages. Like I said, I just threw this together for a demo. But if you've got too many pages in here, what happens is the top pages will start to go over the top. And then when the cover comes down, that pressure will press the ring right into the card. So don't overfill. Make sure the pages are seated when you close it. But the bigger one is, I'm sure you've done this if you have these binders. You're looking for a card, you know what you want. You're not going one page at a time. You grab a handful of pages and you turn, right? Well, you grab a handful of pages, you turn. Look what's happening. You can see it. The pressure to move the page is by dragging the cards against the ring. And the more pages you have, the more force you're using without realizing it. So, if you grab a handful of pages, you actually end up pulling pretty hard to move these all over the top. And all of that force is from the D-rings pressing against these pressure points on the cards. Bad news. Don't let that happen. Be obsessive if you use these binders. One page, and make sure that the card is not ever coming into contact with the ring. Don't overfill, and also don't leave too many empty slots. So one of the things I had tried when I was first coming up with the arrangement that I wanted to use for my binders, I thought it would be cool to have a page for each card, not necessarily full, just a page. So, this page would be mana short, and whatever this page would be, mana flare, whatever, and then I just fill in however many copies I had, and that way I could insert a new page if I had more instead of moving a bunch of stuff. Another risk with binders, but I tried it, and what I found was most pages were mostly empty, and so I'd have a card here and here and nothing else, and the next page. I'm not sure how common it'll be to run into that, but I did notice very quickly that when I didn't have pages full, I had empty slots, and it tended to be in the same place. If I looked at the binder from the side, it was very clear that the cards were bending in the middle because there was more thickness here than here or here, and it was putting pressure on these cards. And so I abandoned that strategy, and I think that was for the best. So there's also ringless binders. Is tunneling uncommon, or am I thinking of burrowing? Look at these things all the time, and it still happens. Guess that is a consequence of getting old. Anyway, there's also ringless binders. So I think that they are all around safer than the D-ring binders, but they do have their own problems. So one thing is that depending what technique you're using to fill them, you may find that you are moving cards more often. You know, if you get a new card that has to go in between, that means pulling a lot of cards out and moving them because you can't insert an empty page. Well, whenever a card is sliding around, that's when you risk scratches or catching a corner on its way in. So consider ahead of time how often you're going to have to move the cards. But the other thing that really the only other thing I found is a lot of these binders advertise a capacity that I don't actually think they can handle. So if you look at this binder, it's only half full. The pages are parallel, and that is what you want. Everyone is sitting flat. That's good. I was originally storing my Ashnod's Transmogrant cards in a binder. It was a little display I was doing that I thought was pretty cool. I eventually outgrew the binder, but I filled up all of the slots in the pages, which seemed reasonable. You know, if it's got that many pages, you should be able to use them. And when you sat the binder down flat, it was like held open because the thickness of the cards with all the pages filled was actually thicker than the binding. And so you kind of had the cards spread out up here and then once again bending over here, especially if you use this strap, which a lot of these binders have. I would advise some caution over filling those binders too. I think you are better off having a few empty pages in the back if it guarantees that you're not going to end up warping your cards, because especially if you're stacking binders on top of each other, you know, if you got a couple of different binders, it does not take that much weight over time to really cause damage. These skin tight ones again. Yeah, look at this. You can't even get the card out. You cannot tell me that that is good. Ooh, a nice lure. I don't have that many copies of lure. It's not a rare. Right? It's just an uncommon, isn't it? Here, okay. Now, sometimes you also have to worry specifically about high value cards. You know, you're talking about boxes and binders, you know. For the most part, they're not all going to be super high value cards, you know, unless you're very fortunate. Now I do happen to be a little bit fortunate. I have some uncommon means, let's say, to secure my more expensive items off-site, which I won't go into for obvious reasons, but theft is a concern, especially with single high-value items. Fire is a concern. Leaks are a concern. And if you're keeping this stuff at home, you know, you need to give that some thought. Bank safety deposit boxes are an option. Private storage facilities are an option. Those are both excellent options against theft and against fire. You need to be careful when it comes to the humidity and the temperature. You know, like some banks only run their air conditioner during business hours. So if it's hot where you live, the bank's closed on Sunday, you're going to get temperature swings. Even overnight, you might get temperature swings. And those ups and downs are not good. A lot of public storage facilities will not be regulating humidity at all. You do also have to worry about access. If your stuff is in a bank or whatever. This pandemic was sort of an eye-opener on that. I bought a Beta Lotus right when the pandemic started, just when everything was taking a big dump. And I closed that deal, but I didn't get the card for 6 months because the seller was not able to get into his safety deposit box where he was storing it. So, you know, something to consider. If you do just want to keep it at home, safes are good, but they have to be real safes. They have to, you know, bolted down or giant heavy duty. These 40-pound, 60-pound safes that you're going to get at, you know, Target or whatever, or in Amazon Basics, it's really not doing anything for you. Someone's just going to grab the safe and leave the house, and then they can spend all day sawing off the hinges. It's not adding very much protection. So get a heavy one, get one of the ones that's bolted. They sell safes that you can embed in the floor or that you can embed in the wall. Neither of those are, the wall ones in particular aren't so hard to install. That's going to do much better for you. Won't help against a fire so much. Now there are fire safes that are rated for fires, but I wouldn't fully rely on that. They're designed to keep the interior temperature below the combustion point of paper, which is 400 degrees Fahrenheit or something, 450 degrees, whatever it is, for a limited amount of time. You know, if you have a really nice one, maybe it's 2 hours. But that doesn't mean it's keeping it at room temperature, you know? If this card is sitting at, say, 300 degrees for 1 hour, the fire safe did its job. Nothing burned. But you can bet your cards could be damaged. Be delaminated, warped, ruined. Which is why insurance is something I want to mention. But before I get to that, I forgot I wanted to mention eBay and PWCC, these third-party vaults. Those are very nice options. Because they're geared towards these collectible categories, they won't have the same humidity and temperature issues that a bank or public storage facility will have. So that's great. But there's going to be fees if you want to remove your item. Based on the fine print on eBay's latest release about their vault, you are technically responsible for reporting sales tax upon removal of an item. And the thing about a remote vault or a bank vault or any of that is you don't have the cards. So to an extent, what's the point, you know? Like I said, my most expensive stuff, I do have to keep it somewhere that's, you know, practical, just given what it's worth. But I keep plenty of binders around for viewing because that's what I love. That's why I do this, you know. I browse the old cards, I page through them. And if you're going to do that in any capacity, you need to consider insurance. I insure my collection. Many people don't. Most people don't, I would say. I've even heard some channels, I did that one wrong. I've even heard some channels outright say not to bother. I'm not saying you should, but I am saying it's something you should think about. And it's going to depend on your risk tolerance and your exposure to collectibles, I suppose. And what would a total loss mean to you if your collection was ruined? Be aware, homeowners insurance policies will be very limited in what they cover. If they cover anything, it's going to cover what you purchased, your basis, not the market value. So if you got a Black Lotus for $50 back in the 90s, and then a pipe breaks and ruins the card, your homeowner's insurance, if it pays you anything, will pay you $50. There's all kinds of other restrictions. But there are companies that specialize in collector's insurance. You know, the one I work with, they had me schedule all of my high value items. They will assess the actual market value if there's a claim. And then there's other cool things you get. For example, anything that I ship, you know, say I'm selling something or I'm sending it to be graded, or that I purchase, so it's being sent to me, as long as that package has signature, I'm fully covered. And I've used that twice. I had an Alpha Jade statue that actually vanished from my mailbox. I have no idea what happened there. I think the mailman delivered it to the wrong house and then it just vanished. And then I had another card. I can't remember what it was, but it made it to that big USPS hub in Philadelphia, I think, and just sat there for a month, and then it's gone. So I had my collection appraised by the guys over at gradedpower.com. They did a really good job, and then I used that as the basis for the insurance. And, you know, is it worth it? Well, that's the same question for any insurance. It depends if loss is something you can stomach, you know. It depends if your investment strategy can overcome the hit that your basis is going to take by having an insurance that premium that you're paying on a regular basis. Now, for me, I've run a couple of businesses. I run businesses. I do real estate. I've seen how many things can go wrong. It happens all the time with the best laid plans. Everything goes wrong that can, eventually. And so my risk tolerance just doesn't let me have the kind of collection I have without having it insured. So for you, consider what percentage of your net worth is at risk from some incident that might take place in a single physical location. And then, decide from there. So hopefully some of that's helpful. Thanks for watching the video today. If you enjoyed it, then take a moment to reflect on the fleeting nature of all of reality and the fact that everything slowly dissipates into nothingness over time. Thanks for watching.